Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to be looking at Beyond the Pale, Crazed Comics and Stories by Kim Deitch. This was a 1989 collection published by Fantagraphics Books, and it was basically collecting, not in any particular order, and it's not complete, but collecting a lot of Kim Deitch stories from his days in the underground, all the way through his stuff in magazines like High Times and Apple Pie, and even later comics from the 80s, independent comics that he was in. But I kind of was disappointed that it wasn't all in order, and it's not complete by any means. I think Kim Deitch just picked what he thought was his best stories. So his early stuff that he did for like the East Village Other, when he was starting out, that stuff, to be honest, it is reproduced here in the introduction. There's a few examples. It's not the Kim Deitch that we know and love today. He was doing these goofy, weird, psychedelic strips. They're fun, and they're really zany underground comics. But within a year or two, he became, I think, one of the best storytellers in comics. And accent on the story. I'm not talking about graphically. Whenever I see a Kim Deitch story in an anthology, I always know, this is going to be great, and it always is. He just nobody tells stories like him. His imagination is off the charts. He just comes up with these amazing, unique stories that are always so entertaining, funny, and just have elements that no other person would think of. So, huge Kim Deitch fan. This is a pretty hefty book. It's 8.5 by 11 and pretty fat. And great back cover here. I think he did this for the book because this is him and all of his characters over the years that he used or created. Sorry. So let's crack this open. There's the title page, another title page, and here we have the contents. I really like the fact that I love when collections do this, tell you where it was published and when it was published. But as you can see, it's totally out of order. It's just kind of wish they put them in order so we could watch the progression. Okay, so we do have an example of his early stuff, and this is let me double check on this. Yes, it is from the East Village Other. This is 1969. This is his early stuff. This is called Crying Ain't Lying, High Flying Funnies. And it's interesting because these robots with the brains in the belly, they look like some steampunk robot, just these goofy looking robots. They appear throughout his career. Kim Deitch almost has this whole universe going, like Marvel Comics, where characters keep reappearing. We realize that a lot of these disparate characters live in the same world, and every now and then we'll meet. But this is just a really trippy, psychedelic comic. But as you can see, his art style is already pretty much there. This is, it's unmistakably Kim Deitch. Everyone's got these big buggy eyes. And pretty good comic. But, it's not like telling much of a story. We have an introduction. Here's another example of his early art from 1969. See, as you can see, he was trying to be very trippy and psychedelic. In this introduction that he writes, it's really fun. He talks about when he first submitted comics, the editors were literally like, make it more psychedelic. And so he went back and came up with this stuff. So I think he definitely satisfied the job requirement there. It's pretty trippy. Here's more of this hippie art. It's pretty kind of crude, some of the stuff. It's like he definitely became a better artist. Just very quickly. There's a picture of him, I believe in 1989. So this first comic is from 1981. It's from Gates of Eden #1. I believe we looked at this comic. I'm pretty sure. Did we? Maybe I'm wrong. But I have this comic, and this is great. This is just an autobiographical reminiscence where when he was 14, him and his friend Tony Eastman made a film You can see it on YouTube. It was called Dial M for Monster, and that's the title of the comic as well. We see the opening scene. When I first read this comic, of course, I could only imagine what this film looked like. It's amazing that we live in a world where I read this and I'm like, oh, let me see this film on YouTube. And so that's what I did last night. So after years of imagining what this film looked like, I got to see it. And a lot of these panels just literally duplicate what's in the movie. He's basically showing us what's in the movie. He talks about the early cartoons he used to make. I still haven't looked up these. I wonder if these exist on the internet. His brother and Tony Eastman's brother were actors in the film. And it just shows, here's more clips from the film. And he's just kind of telling us all about this movie. There is some stop motion animation that's kind of remarkable for a 14-year-old. This dinosaur running around eating this girl from their high school. And that's pretty much all it is. But pretty interesting. Next we have Keep 'Em Flying. And this is another, I believe, autobiographical tale. I'm sure he embellishes it, you know. And this is from the 70s. He's at a hypnosis seminar. This woman asked for 3 volunteers. Kim Deitch is one of them. In no time at all, he was under, as they say. He was in this zone. He was walking through a long corridor. He saw a door at the end of this tunnel. And when he opened the door, it's his creation, Waldo the cat. His longtime character that he's been drawing for decades. He's, of course, surprised to see him. He's like, why are you here? He's like, well, this is your mental workshop, so of course I exist there. And it's a real mess. And the place is a mess. Because I think Kim Deitch was at a period in his life when his life was a mess. And so Waldo says, clean this place up, and I'll take care of the outside. So he does. Outside, it looks like Waldo has turned this mental workshop into a cool, weird, bulbous spaceship. And so now Waldo basically says, let's take it for a ride. Let's go to another planet outside our solar system. They land on this planet named Carniva. Seems kind of idyllic. He sees all these cartoon mice that look exactly like mice from those silent film cartoons. These things were ubiquitous in almost every cartoon. And then all of a sudden, these cats who look just like Waldo show up like a platoon of soldiers. And they're like, hands up, Earthmen. Well done, Agent Waldo. So we realize Waldo, this has all been his scheme. He goes to visit the king. Well, they take him to see the king. For some reason, the king is a human. He looks like some classical cartoon character too, like Foxy Grandpa or something. I think it is, but I don't know. My comics history isn't that good. And so now basically they're gonna feed him to the planet. It turns out that the planet is a meat-eating organism. They usually just feed it the mice, but every now and then they like to feed him a nice human treat, a nice juicy human. It's crazy. It's like Ego the Living Planet, but way goofier. And they throw him in. Of course, we realize it's just a dream, and we see that the other 2 patients are under a strong hypnotic spell. But the speaker here says, and here in our 3rd case, we see a typical pitfall many new inductees encounter. Instead of obtaining a hypnotic state, this subject has just fallen sound asleep. And Kim Deitch is snoring. This was all a dream. And I don't know why this cracks me up, just how everyone's laughing at him. Like, what a dummy, what a maroon. Next, we have Famous Frauds, #1 in the series, The Adventures of Don Carlos Balmori. It says it's a true story. These were in Arcade magazine, the great underground anthology. This is a lot of these comics I own already in other underground comics, but some of these I can't show off. Well, maybe I can show off Arcade. I'm going to look at it again, but I think there's a little too much naughtiness in it. So a lot of these I can't show you in their original undergrounds, so it's nice to have this book. It's also nice just to have all this Kim Deitch in one spot, because sometimes I'm in the mood for just a great story. And this is the thing, I really doubt this is true. I'm pretty sure this has all the earmarks of a weird Kim Deitch story, but who knows? So the story opens in Mexico City. The year is 1927. We find ourselves at a fancy pants society party. Among the guests is Carlos Gonzalez, a rising real estate broker. All of a sudden, the footmen announce Senor Don Carlos Balmori. Apparently, he's the richest man in Mexico. He approaches Senor Gonzalez, says that he has heard about his great prowess as a salesman, and he says, I want you to come to work for me. Is $500,000 a year good? And he's like, oh, Senor, I'm so happy. I don't know what to say. He says, but there's one provision. Call it eccentricity, if you will, but I insist that all the men who work for me must be clean shaven. And he says, but even my wife hasn't seen me without a beard. But of course, he wants that $500,000 a year, so he does. All of a sudden, Don Carlos says, my diamond stick pin is missing. And a guy comes up to Carlos Gonzalez, and he finds it in his pocket. And of course, he's dumbfounded. He's like, I didn't take that. This must be some mistake. Now, I guess I'll call him Balmori, because they're both named Carlos. Balmori, the richest man in Mexico, says, call the police. The police come. They're taking Balmori away. He's pleading with him, saying, I'm innocent. Please, Balmori. And then Balmori says, release him. And then he proceeds to take off his hat and his fake mustache. It's a woman. It's this old woman, Señorita Concepcion Jurado. And everyone in the party, everyone there is a plant. It was all part of this big joke. And we realize that this has been going on for years. Everyone in this room has been a victim of one of Balmori's pranks. He recounts his humiliation. And then all these people are so humiliated that they're then sworn to secrecy to help him with to prank other people. So a prominent newspaper editor is one of these victims. So he has, doctors all these photos to make it look like Balmori is this fabulously wealthy adventurer who travels the world, judging beauty contests, going on safari. I wish this story was true. It could be. I'm just skeptical because it's a little too funny to be true. Turns out in private, Señorita Jurado is this totally pious, chaste woman who lives like a nun. And so, but then at one party, this one of the his victims, I think this is the same guy who was tricked into being naked at a party. He introduces his beautiful niece to Balmori, and of course Balmori woos her. He even gets down on his knee to propose, and then he lifts his hat and takes his mustache off to trick her. But then the niece takes off her wig, and it turns out that it's a guy. So they finally got him back. They tricked Balmori. When Balmori died when Jurado died in 1931, the ban on her secret was lifted. And now every year, apparently, on the anniversary of her death, they pay homage to this rascal of yore. There's a shrine to her, and all these rich people who've been tricked by her over the years come visit her. What a great story. This next one's called Little Pal, and we're at the Burndale Acres Sanitarium. Remember that name, Burndale Acres Sanitarium. They're doing a seminar on imaginary playmates. And basically they're saying, this is something we have to take serious. Of course, people would scoff at people with imaginary friends, but we have to actually listen to these people. It could be part of their therapy. So we see Nathan Mishkin. Kim Deitch has made not hundreds, but he's made many stories about Nathan Mishkin. He's a kind of a long-term resident of the sanitarium. He's in and out all the time. He's a kind of a kook. Now, his imaginary friend is Waldo the cat. That's how Waldo the cat started, pretty much. And then Waldo says, I want to check out all my imaginary colleagues. And we see all these kids with all their various imaginary playmates. King Vitamin, the Pep Boys, this one girl, they're her imaginary friends. Just all these goofy cartoon characters. And so he sees this one girl, and he doesn't see her imaginary playmate. She's eating candy. He says, hey, how about giving me some of that candy? How about a little candy for Uncle Waldo? And she says, sorry, but this is for Big Billy Goat. And we see this imaginary playmate, this giant goat. And Waldo just walks off. Bah, I'm not going to fuck with that shit. Kim Deitch does this a lot in his comics, like these great panels showing of scale, where these monsters will be like bursting out of the panel. It really makes them seem bigger, really huge. Now, this next one we just looked at in, let me double check where I think we looked at this in, oh no, we didn't look at this recently, so I'll kind of recount it again. This was in Insect Fear number 3, which we looked at about, I think, a year ago, maybe 8 months ago. So the story begins in a penitentiary back in 1935. Silk Miller is this guy who's on death row. Now, his neighbor on death row is this guy, Cosmo LeVay, who's into the supernatural. And he's not scared of dying. He's going to die like in an hour or maybe in a day. And he basically says he has this trick. It's a spell that if you just recite this phrase, Opo ote oto, even if you just think it, you'll escape death. So he tells Silk, he's like, they're not going to fry me tomorrow or any other day. I'm going to make it. So that night, Cosmo dies. There's not a mark on his body. And they're like, I guess we won't get to electrocute him. Let me see if I skipped a page now. There we go. And so now Silk Miller's a believer. Just because the look on his face is so calm and serene, he's like, oh my God, he beat the electric chair. So he starts reciting, Opo te oto. As they take him to the electric chair, he's just happy-go-lucky. He's confident that this is going to save him. He's joking with the press. As they jolt him with the electricity, he says the phrase once again. I didn't mention that Cosmo also told him that you'll be reincarnated and be very famous. So now we cut away to Cosmo at the morgue. A guard runs in and says, wait, don't start the autopsy. These guys are here for the body. And they take Cosmo. Turns out he's not dead. And it's a self-induced cataleptic trance. And he goes on to start a new life under a new name. He makes a fake doctor's degree for himself. I love that he never went to medical school, but he just kind of scams his way into having a doctor's practice. And he's saying, I'm sorry, Mrs. Starbrook, your husband couldn't be saved. But Dr. Henry only had tonsillitis. So he's really bad. But eventually he just he figures it out and he gets rich and famous. In his old age, he gets into horticulture. He's really into organic gardening. And one day he goes to his garden and he finds this amazing potato that has the face of Silk Miller on it. And these tendrils that almost look like arms and legs. So then we see him a little while later and he says, Silk, we made it. And I guess this freak potato takes top honors at the state fair. So the prediction was true, just not the way Silk imagined. He was reincarnated, and he was famous, at least to other horticulturalists. I haven't even mentioned Kim Deitch's art. His completely unique style, just so fun and cartoony. I remember as a little kid, it took me a while to warm up to his style. I just thought it was too silly looking. And then I realized, of course, after reading a few stories, I was like, God, these stories are so good. And then I just realized, no, nobody else could draw these stories. It's perfect for his kind of narratives. Next, we have Cabbage Fiend. This is featuring his character, Krishna Horowitz. He's at a vegetarian restaurant. Well, it's not totally vegetarian, but it's a health food restaurant with his friend. And he just orders a cheeseburger and a bottle of beer. Now, she tells him, you should give the vegetarian lifestyle a chance. And he's like, yeah, you're talking to an ex-vegetarian. Me and my friend used to go cabbage hunting all the time. He talks about bringing a record player out into the woods. He'd put on the Teddy Bear Picnic record, and the cabbages were all attracted to it and would run to the sound of the music, and then they would bop him on the head and put him in a sack. But then he started feeling really guilty about it, and he stopped. Of course, she's all like, her friend's like, you expect me to believe that? That's bullshit. So just a weird little anecdote. We have another one of those famous frauds. This is the Great Ajib chess-playing automaton. And I guess we're at I think we're in kind of like Coney Island, somewhere in New York City. It's at this kind of amusement place. And one of the star attractions was Ajib. And for a quarter, you could play chess with him. Of course, everyone was just like, this is bullshit. Some people think it's bullshit. Some people are amazed and astounded that this robot can beat every chess guy. Turns out it's just this guy inside who's really good at chess. His name's Harry Nelson Pillsbury. I guess he'd look through, the beard was really just a gauze, and so he could look through. He had a mechanical hand that he could move the chess pieces. And he won almost every time. But this guy, he was stuck in he had this cramped working conditions, stuck in this robot all day. And he was just drinking a quarter day of liquor. Eventually it took its toll. He went completely insane. So then he had to get another operator. This guy didn't even know how to play chess. So it was just checkers now. Unfortunately, he was consumptive. So it was really hard for him not to sneeze. But then finally, he finds a guy to work in Ajib, Jesse Hansen, who's over 6 feet tall. So you'd think it'd be even more cramped in there. But he loved his job, even though he had to really scrunch up there. So one day they're at this fair. These little kids come up. I guess you win a box of cigars if you beat Ajib, which no one ever does. Now, Hansen's feeling in good form that day. But all of a sudden, this little kid is beating the shit out of him. He's every move, he's checking him. And the kid wins. Gets the box of cigars. Poor Hansen, if only he could have known. He had just taken part in a historic occasion. It was the first chess prize that Bobby Fischer ever won. So this is young Bobby Fischer, the famous chess champion. And all the kids are smoking the cigars. And, of course, the boss, the owner of Ajib, says, "This is coming out of your salary." Oh, I hope that's true. I don't think it's true. Next, okay, this is the story we just looked at, a month ago. Let me double check here. Yeah, this was in Occult Laugh Parade, that great underground comic that edited by Jay Kinney. So I'm just going to kind of, Well, actually, I'm not going to tell you much about it, but this does feature Miles Mycroft, psychic detective. If you want to really get to the details of the story, look at the Occult Laugh Parade. It's spelled L-A-F-F. Search through my videos and you can find it. I think I put it up less than a month ago. But it's a great story. Amazing. I'll just flip through it, let you see. So Miles Mycroft is definitely part of this Kim Deitch-averse. He's written many stories about Miles Mycroft and his wife. Now we have Noodles Punctured Romance. And so we see Noodles Romanoff, who's in a stolen car being chased by the police with an inflatable sex doll in the passenger seat. And he's yelling at the cops, "Go fly a kite, you big jerks." And the cop shoots the inflatable doll through the neck. Noodles crashes the car. He's crying. He's like, "I hope you're satisfied, you murderers. You killed her." And he's like, "Come on, Noodles. We got to get you back to Burndale." So there it is. So he's a resident of Burndale Sanitarium. And they pull him away screaming and kicking. So, the car's been dented, and one cop tells the other cop, "I'll get his old man to pay for the dented fender." He always does. So apparently this happens all the time. So now the cop goes to Dirty Harry's adult bookstore, and I guess he's the one who called the police because Noodles stole this sex doll. Of course, they return it. It's, ruptured. And the guy says, "I'm going to press charges." And the cop kind of dresses him down and says, "Listen, creep, you're the one that ought to be in jail. This guy's just a poor mental patient." And so the guy backs off. Now we see Noodle back at the sanitarium. And there's Nate Michigan with Waldo, looking like a little ghost. And that's the end of the story. Next we have Cult of the Clown. And this is we see this woman, Candy Crenshaw, applying clown makeup. And this comic imagines this world where it's a big fad among teenagers to be clowns. I guess he kind of predicted the Insane Clown Posse, the Juggalos. And now we see this flash forward panel. Just this craziness going on. We'll find out how we get there in a second. Little splash panel. So we see Candy trying to leave the house all bundled up because she doesn't want her father to see her. The father pulls the cloth off and says, "Martha, come have a look at your daughter." So both, of course she's like, "Oh, honey, you promised me you wouldn't be clowning again." And the father just says, "She's no longer a baby. If she wants to go out looking like an idiot, I wash my hands of her." So Martha says, "How could you, George?" And he says, "Don't worry, I got a handle on this." And he dresses up like a clown. And he says, "I'll keep an eye on our daughter this way. I know where she's going. Bozo the Clown's appearing at this theater. All the clownies will be there." That's what they call them, clownies. So he goes to the show. Candy is there with her boyfriend. And now George sneaks in. Now this bozo is this interesting radical. He basically has a cop, a mother, and Jesus up there, and he's throwing pies at them, almost as an example of like socialist beliefs, don't listen to the repressive police authorities and, religion's bullshit. Now the father is basically like, "I've had enough of this crap." He goes to grab Candy. Of course, she doesn't know, they don't recognize him. The boyfriend's like, "What are you doing with my girlfriend?" And his name's Randy, by the way, the boyfriend. So all of a sudden, Bozo says, "Stop! Send that pie-stained poltroon up here." It's George. And he says, "Listen, there's a time and place for everything." He gives him a card with an address, and he says, "Meet me after the show." Now he goes to the address, and all the other clownies go too. And it's this total clowny bacchanal. All kinds of debauchery is going on. And, George is there undercover. He calls the cops. He says, "Send a paddy wagon. There's some crazy shit going down." Bozo catches him. Says, "I knew you were a fink." Pulls a gun on him. And now we see that opening splash panel. So Bozo's got a gun on George, and this is his dialogue. This is the clowny philosophy, or at least Bozo's. "We shall purge the world of repressive capitalist gloom with a smirk and a snicker, for the human spirit can be truly liberated only when the last pig oppressor is bathed in blood." So he's this hardcore communist, but he's also into clown stuff. So basically he's going to shoot him. And George says, "Well, Mr. Bozo, maybe my goose is cooked, but I'm taking you with me." And he drives his car off this cliff. Now, the newspaper the next day talks about Bozo's death. And also, they mistakenly think George was a clowny. So everyone, all of his friends and neighbors are like, "Oh, I never realized he was into that sick shit." And now we see Randy and Candy. And of course, Candy's sad. She's like, "I never knew my father was a clowny. Why didn't he tell me?" And then we just see this weird, almost like a political poster, "Keep your eye on the pie." And George and Bozo, with a revolutionary army of clownies, is attacking. Randy tells Candy he'll never die as long as the will to be free of pig oppression is strong. Next, we have Possessed. Now, this is another Miles Mycroft story, but this one is also, we're introduced to his diminutive wife, Blanche. She's very small, like little person small. So once again, Miles is being released from the sanitarium. He has to go in every now and then because he has a very fragile mind. We see this aging, almost dead mafioso in a wheelchair, and his two sons are making him sign a document. And basically they're getting him released. Miles' wife, Blanche, says, "Let's get out of here. This place gives me the creeps." Oh, I'm sorry. The two sons don't take their father. They take him back into the sanitarium. Apparently, he's going to be the guinea pig for this senility oxygenator, which apparently makes senile people lucid for a short period of time. It seems like it doesn't work. Now, it does work a little, though, because all of a sudden, the old man, he escapes while the sons are arguing with the nurse. Now, he sneaks into Miles and Blanche's car. He holds a razor to Miles' throat, and he says, so I guess he's lucid now. He says, "You driving me to Glendale or the boyfriend gets it. A certain hotel." But then all of a sudden, I guess it fades. He tells them about the hotel room. He says, "You have to register in room 22. And then he basically becomes senile again and nonverbal. Right then, a cop shows up with the two sons. I love the characters of Milo and Blanche. Like, Blanche is this little fireball. She totally bosses Miles around. He kind of needs it, though. He's kind of clueless. So basically Blanche doesn't tell them anything. She just says, "Oh yeah, he was in our car." But she's basically thinking, "Oh, I bet there's some money in that room in room 22. Now, They go to the hotel. It turns out it's now the First Church of Incantology. It's some weird like cult place. So Blanche sends Miles away. Miles can't take all the stress. He's freaking out. He's like, I don't want to go back to the sanitarium. This is too much weirdness. She says, okay, check yourself in a hotel down the street and I'll take care of this. So she goes and she fakes her way in. She says, I'm really interested in this stuff. I'm a numerology buff. Do you think I could take room 22? Apparently the room is occupied. Now we see Miles in the hotel room and he's trying to chill out and relax. So Blanche becomes a member of this cult. She's working, unloading all this meat, like a lot of meat, like whole cows. And also loading can after can of a lava-like liquid that stinks. Finally, she, at the end of the day, when everyone's asleep, she goes to room 22 and the lock gives way. She picks the lock. And once again, these giant monsters that seem to explode out of the panel. Blanche falls. It's like a 2-story room, maybe 3 stories, with this giant demon, and they're feeding him cows, and he's pooping out the lava-like substance that we saw earlier. Just such a Kim Deitch demon. All Kim Deitch art looks like it's like from some great Fleischer cartoon that was never made from the 30s. So now Blanche falls to the floor. This cult leader woman, she says, back Oxo, that's the name of the demon. She's got some kind of talisman that can control him. She says, she tells Blanche that her goose is cooked. She says, you're going to be an hors d'oeuvre for this guy. And then we hear the whole story. Apparently he was this little, they summoned this tiny demon who just kept growing and growing, needing more food. They fed all of the cult people eventually to Oxo. And he just keeps getting bigger and bigger. So they knocked out room partitions so he could have room. That's why that strange room was like 3 stories high. So when they were knocking out the partition on room 22, they found the old mafioso's a metal box full of $500,000. They've been using it though like crazy to feed this thing. You know, buying all those meat. Now, meanwhile, Miles is trying to find Blanche. And all of a sudden he has a psychic flash. He says, Blanche is in trouble. And the 2 mafia sons see him. And they follow him. They figure, oh, this guy's, he's onto something. So Blanche is tied up, about to be lunch for Oxo. And then Miles shows up. And Miles has another psychic flash. He tricks them. He says, whatever you do, don't go into room 22. And the guys say, thanks, sucker. And of course, they do the same thing Blanche does. And they fall right into the mouth of Oxo. Blanche swings on a rope and escapes through the window. Oxo breaks through the wall on a rampage. And somehow Miles, using his psychic powers, knows a spell, an incantation to dissolve this demon. He does it, and the demon disappears. I love these character designs. They just look funny. His art just makes me laugh just looking at it. So now it looks like they've got the rest of the money. It's not all the $500,000 because they spent a bunch, but they still got a ton. And now, 1 month later, all the stress has put Miles back in the sanitarium. We see Blanche is now like this, living like a rock star. And but you know, she loves Miles, so she visits him regularly. And there's that poor old mafioso just drooling. His sons can't visit him anymore because they're dead. This is really nice that Fantagraphics did this. I guess this was a 2-page spread. And you know, so many times in books, because the binding, you miss like the whole middle of it. So they decided to make this pull-out so we could see the full effect. This is one of those great pieces he did for arcade. This is, I think this might be called the Teddy Bear Picnic. This is just this great little thing about this guy, Hollis Hale, a very wealthy man who his big passion was collecting teddy beariana. And he's now drifting into his final coma. We see all of his relatives. In his will, he demanded that they dress up as teddy bears. And of course, they're all there. They want a piece of the action. They want to be part of his will. But Hollis doesn't care about any of that. While his valet plays the teddy bear picnic on a record player, there's always so many little callbacks in these comics. We see Hollis is just in this beautiful afterlife where he gets to go on picnics with all these great little teddy bears, eating chocolate cake and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches in this beautiful, fun, anthropomorphic world full of teddy beariana. Kind of like that story. And then, I wish that was true. I wish there were afterlives. And then we have another one, anthropomorphism. And this is just Kim Deitch just having a good time really playing with anthropomorphism. Even the letters, of course, are anthropomorphized. The raindrops are all screaming bonsai as they fall to the ground. Everything in this is anthropomorphized. This guy's tie is saying, the rain is ruining my material. The newspaper's talking. Just Kim Deitch having a good time with this stuff. And it continues over here. And basically he's just explaining it to us. The whole concept. He even has an amoeba. Next we have Beyond the Pale. And we see Noodles again. Now, this guy, Noodles is in this little cart with a Ouija board where the steering wheel should be. He crashes into this guy's car. Noodles comes out of his unconscious state, and he's just ranting. He says, I am Reglor. Long ago, my people came from beneath the sea. An undersea civilization. I, Reglor, and 3 other synthetic slaves accompanied our masters on their mercy mission. So he was just a slave. And we see these guys, and they try to, basically help the humans, the cavemen. They had some golden elixir that would banish disease. Of course, the cavemen are a bunch of savages, so they just killed them. Oh, I'm sorry. They beat him up. They didn't kill him. And so these elders, whatever, these undersea elders, had left one of the slaves behind, which is him, Reglor. They buried him in the ground. Now, all of a sudden, Noodles comes to. He says, where am I? What was I saying? How am I here? He basically blacked out. So the guy who hit him is named Barney Bernard. He's a newspaper reporter. And he basically tells Noodles what he told him. And Noodles is just like, I said all that? That's crazy. That's nuts. I don't know what you're talking about, but it's funny. So, all of a sudden, he couldn't even remember his own name when he came out of the trance or whatever, blacked out. But now he says, it's coming back. My name's R.N. Romanoff, occult scientist, Noodles Romanoff. Perhaps you've seen my electric Ouija board. And now, basically, Bernard tows his little electric Ouija board, that's the little cart he had, past the Burndale Sanitarium. And they start chasing him. Now, Noodles, his little thing crashes through this fence into a women's softball game. And he says, this is where the statue was buried, where Reglor is buried. I don't know how he knows this. So they dig, they indulge him, And they find, as Noodles digs, there actually is this weird stone statue. It's like a petrified giant. Meanwhile, Miles Mycroft, who is once again back at Burndale Sanitarium, he's doing chores. I guess he's on mop duty. And he visits this old guy there, who's 109, Mr. Freund. And Miles tells him about the giant statue being found. He says, "You better sit down, Miles. I got a story for you." He says, back in 1885, these kind of swindlers, Scuttle, Butler, and Owl O'Reilly came to town. They were tarred and feathered because they sold some bad medicine. Everyone's puking. And they read about the Cardiff Giant. Now, that was a famous hoax that's real, where these guys buried this stone giant. When it was dug up, everyone thought, oh, this is 1,000 years old. What a mystery. It was all a scam. So they decided to do the same thing. They go to a stone maker, who's actually young Mr. Freund, a mason, and he makes their statue for him. And they bury it. And then Mr. Freund dies of a heart attack. So now on TV, Noodles is kind of showing off and talking about these Atlanteans, you know, the whole myth. And Noodles is very happy. He's like, my whole life people have called me a loony. And basically the nurses and doctors just say, get back to work, Miles. Because Miles was thinking about blowing the lid on this scam. But he's like, Noodles looks so happy. I'm not going to tell everyone Mr. Freund's story. Next, we have Michigan's Folly. Once again, we're at Burndale Sanitarium. This is Michigan's Folly, or A Moon, a Fool, and a Furlough. So Nathan Michigan has been such a good patient. They're allowing him to go to Long Island for the weekend to go home. They're like, be careful, though. Remember, no drinking. Because Nathan Michigan, whenever he drinks, he doesn't just get drunk, he goes crazy. And that's when he starts seeing Waldo. He seems like he's doing great. He seems really healthy and sane. He goes right home and his wife's waiting for him. She says, we're going to a party tonight. And even though he's worried about it, he goes. This guy insists he has a drink. And of course, Waldo pops up because he's a little drunk. And under Waldo's influence, he keeps drinking more and more. Everyone's looking at him saying, he's been talking to no one in particular, just talking to himself. Because he talks to Waldo, nobody can see Waldo, of course. He gets mad at Waldo. They're arguing about Willie Mays, and he crashes his head, bashes his head with a punch bowl. Of course, to everyone there, it just looks like he went crazy and threw the punch bowl on the ground. And then poor Nathan, we see him being returned to Burndale Sanitarium, puke all over his suit. And the workers there are even like, Show hates to see you like this, Mr. Michigan. Next, we have TV and Me. This is a very odd one. And this is kind of a shout out to Robert Armstrong, who created the couch potato movement. And so we're at a meeting of the couch potatoes. And these are guys who just love TV. It's their passion. They have a guest speaker who wrote a book. His name's, let's see what his name is. Mark. And Mark's going to give a guest lecture. This one isn't much of a story. It's just pretty funny. And Mark was on about his love of TV. When he was a little kid, he saw the very first TV. And it's all in his book. All the guys listening to his lecture are just asking all these snarky questions. Like, they're all like trying to prove that they know more than him about television history. They talk about Howdy Doody. I guess he won was on the Howdy Doody show. Talking about all these other great kids shows at the time. talking about the golden age of live TV. It's pretty funny, though, because all these guys are just, like, asking these annoying questions, arguing with him about the merits of Amos and Andy. And this black guy there starts giving him shit. He's like, Amos and Andy was racist. And he's like, no, it isn't. And it turns into this big argument. And then for some reason, they all have to clear out because the Aryan Brotherhood happens to be meeting there next at this hotel lounge. I see these guys looking like Hitler. And Robert Armstrong shows up. So next is a comic we looked at in Mondo Snarfo, that really great underground that basically, I think it was Art Spiegelman edited it. He just asked all his underground colleagues to make basically really abstract, surreal comics. And Kim Deitch trucks out these robots that he has been drawing for, at this point, probably like 5 years already. And this is just this total, like, you know, wordless strip, really just bizarro. We see these robots. There's an alarm. One of their, I can't remember what they're called. Basically, these little creatures, which are the souls of dead people from hundreds of years before. They're kept alive in these little homunculi. So one of them has escaped. And it's this little guy here. So weird. So funny looking. And this guy escapes, and he makes it to the time travel place, and he jumps in the machine, and he goes back to 1947 when, I guess, that's when he was taken to the future from. And he rings on the doorbell. He has to leap up there. It's his wife. He says, Betty, it's me, Herb. She just freaks out. She can't hear him because his voice is so tiny. She thinks it's a bug. So he falls to his death. And then she just flushes him down the toilet. I really love this, just the way this is over the panels. It's a really neat touch. I really like this comic. That Mondo Snarfo is just great all around. There's some amazing shit in there. So next we have Genocide with Blanche Mycroft. And once again, I just looked at this literally, probably even more recently. It was in that apple pie. It's in Academy Roundup, I believe, the last one, which I think is number 5. So I look at this comic in depth there. But basically, Blanche Mycroft gets involved with this, goes undercover because this pig baron is getting robbed. She tries to find out who's stealing all the pigs. Turns out it's this guy who just loves pigs and wants to rescue them from slaughter. And she comes around to his point of view. It's I kind of like, this comic's kind of sweet, actually. Next we have Michigan's Last Judgment. And this is kind of a parody of Jack T. Chick comics, where we see, he just like Jack T. Chick, he draws God with no face. Waldo the cat gets to go to heaven because he repented at the end, even though he was a total sinful guy. Michigan didn't, so he's thrown into the lake of fire. And then he's reincarnated. Waldo intercedes and says, hey, I worked out a deal. You're going to be reincarnated. Of course, it's all a dream. And Nathan Michigan's at the food shelter. Fell asleep during Mass. That's why he dreamed about heaven and hell. An incident in the early life of Miles Mycroft. This is a fucking epic, this comic. This is from Corn-Fed 2, which I've never owned. So this is a treat to have this. I think this is like 23 pages or 27 pages long. We see young Miles Mycroft. This kind of time machine comes out of nowhere. These 2 weird-looking guys in strange futuristic fashions zap Miles in the head with some kind of ray beam. And when he wakes up, he tries to tell his parents. And they're like, oh, son, you just imagined it. But apparently, that ray beam gave him his psychic powers. He predicts that his uncle will die because Truman will get reelected. It turns out it's true. So Miles is now a child prodigy psychic. This comic is really interesting because I've never seen Deitch draw like this. As you can see, it's much more detailed, almost darker. you can still tell it's Kim Deitch, but it's just more illustrative than most of his comics, less cartoony looking, even though it's very cartoony, but less. So 25 years later, Miles is in bad shape, and we'll find out how. I love this page of Miles being tormented by demons and ghosts and psychic emanations. So he's in the drunk tank. He says, Miles, the chief wants to see you. Outside, the newsboys are talking about this famous psychic being kidnapped. He's missing. Allard Boratine. Yeah, I think he's just missing. I don't think they know he's kidnapped. So the chief says, I need your help. You're a psychic sleuth. Miles says, I'm through with that. I'm through. I guess it's just made him miserable. He says, listen, you got to do this. Think of your wife. You could be, released early. You got to pull yourself together and help us on this. He tells him how horrible it is being a psychic. He never knows when some monstrous vision will come into his head. Going by a graveyard is fucking traumatic. All the ghosts and talk to him, all the dead voices. And so basically the chief threatens him. Now, Mrs. Boratine comes in. What a weird looking character. And she basically is chewing out the chief of police. Is like, what do you mean putting this guy in the case? He's a fucking drunken idiot. And he's like, this is the best we've got. So now Miles bumps into the guy from his childhood. The guy from the future. And he says, so we meet again. He says, I guess I owe you an explanation. So now he meets the other guy. And they're in this futuristic thing. And there's Boratine. Turns out Boratine's not a real psychic. He's just from the future. The same future these guys are from. He basically stole a time machine and went back into the past, using his future knowledge to seem like a psychic and make a lot of money. So they explain that they were chasing after Boratine when they, found young Miles. And so their missing time machine showed up in 1949. I guess Boratine stole it. Unfortunately, they reclaimed it in time before the authorities figured out what it was. And then in the ensuing weeks, they just popped up every few years to try to find Boratine. Finally, they saw an ad for his act, his psychic act, and they scooped him up. And now they're going to bring him back to the future. Right then, Mrs. Boratine comes in with a shotgun. She's like, hand over my husband. And she's just this tough cookie. I love this character. She grabs Boratine and says, come on. So Miles says, I'll make a deal with you. I'll help you recapture Boratine if you undo the damage of your ray gun and rid me of my psychic powers, because it's just a curse to me. So he comes up with a plan. They head out to San Bernardino, where they know Iris is from. That's Mrs. Boratine. And, of course, they bring the time machine, and they go back to 1949. And so we see Boratine back in 49 when he first met Iris, and he basically hits on her, says, hey, how would you like to go back to my hotel room? We could have a nice party. And they get the room next door, these future guys. They have this machine that they can look through the wall to see what's going on over there. Now basically we see their first date, and he tells her he's from the future, and she's like, you're a nut job. But she has a couple drinks, And she actually kind of likes the guy, even though she's like, this guy's a nut. Now, meanwhile, the two guys from the future Miles and one of the guys from the future is looking for that machine, that missing time machine that showed up in 1949 that we talked about earlier. Meanwhile, the assistant here from the future, he's watching these two have sex, and he's all like, oh, shit. She says to board team, for a nut, that wasn't half bad. So he says, I'll prove it to you. I'll prove that I'm not crazy. And he takes her to that drugstore where the time machine is. Miles stalls them. Meanwhile, a cop shows up, thinks that Miles is harassing this couple. And the cop's just pissed off. He's like, I'm going to take you all in. What the hell's going on here? Then all of a sudden, the assistant shows up from the future. He conks the cop on the head. And now they've got board team. And then all of a sudden, the main guy from the future, the leader, he says, oh, my heart. And he has a heart attack. Board team says, now it's our chance, Iris. Meanwhile, Miles is dressed up as a cop. He stops at a bar for a drink. Turns out the leader from the future was just faking. He says, this is all part of my plan. In the bar, he sees himself as a young boy because he was on TV and stuff for being a psychic prodigy. So now Miles reunites with the two guys from the future, and he says, what happened to Iris and board team? And he basically says they've been removed from the timeline as if they never were. As far as 1973 is concerned, that's the year this came out, it's like they never existed. And they tell Miles that they have to go now. They're going back to the future. And as they leave, Miles realizes that they welched on their part of the deal. He doesn't have his psychic powers anymore, but they totally took his memory. He doesn't remember anything before the age of 9. The chief of police who put him on the mission finds him, and he's like a 9-year-old. He's like, Mama. He's crying, where's my mommy? So, of course, they take him to a psychiatrist. He tells them, yeah, he's got amnesia. We need help with this one. Someone needs to re-educate him. And then Blanche shows up. Now, apparently, Blanche and Miles have been estranged, but she kind of still loves him. So she comes back into his life, and every day kind of teaches him stuff, brings him up to speed. And then they start their psychic act again. Even though he has no psychic powers, they're grifters. But he can't pick it up. He forgets all the clues, the way these grifters work, these psychics. And so, of course, it puts a strain on the relationship, and then she leaves him again. Miles kind of develops some more happy-go-lucky attitude. I love this how now we're in the future, so everyone's wearing these crazy fashions because Miles has gotten older. I don't know. I guess this is what Kim Deitch thought maybe the 80s or 90s would look like. So he still loved Blanche. So he had this holographic viewer that he would just watch Blanche. And of course his wife would always come and be like, oh, Miles, turn that off. Look at Blanche here. This is, I guess, supposedly what people would look like in the future. But in a way, Miles is happy. This woman totally treats him like she mothers him. And he actually kind of likes it. He's happy with his life, with this domineering wife. They go on a trip to the moon. Remember, this is the future, so that's commonplace. And Miles dies on the trip. And then all of a sudden he wakes up. And now we see the connection to that other story. He's one of those little homunculi. We don't see the robots, but we see these guys, who zapped him in the past. And they're like, yeah, we basically reincarnated you. Your memories and your brain is still here. God, the story's so nuts. It's a bonkers epic. It's called a bioderm. So he's now a bioderm, an artificial receptacle for the souls of the dead. So it's almost like heaven, a weird man-made heaven. Now, the citizens in the future here, look at these crazy fashions. I love this. They're all rebelling against this reclaimed bioderm center. They're basically saying, you know, we don't even have food, and you're spending millions keeping these dead people alive, maintaining these dead people. Good point. Then we have a weird flashback to Golgotha, 33 AD, and we see Jesus about to be crucified, and he's stalling the crucifixion. He pays this guard to stall it, and then all of a sudden the time machine pops up, and he says, "Ooh, that was close." And it's board team. So that's where he was sent, to take Jesus's place. Now, meanwhile, far in the future, of course, Jesus pops up with the time machine, and he comes out into the future, and he tells all these revolting humans, he says, "You must cease this destruction. I'll prove that I'm not a fake. Bring me 5 tankards of water." Now, Iris board team is there. She's like, "What's going on? Where am I?" Excuse me. So he basically tells Miles Bioderm, he says, "The miracle of time travel has allowed us to literally rewrite history to remold it, not the way it was, but the way it should have been." So all these mythical characters, we've actually created, and we see these actors, these time actors, Cleopatra, Santa Claus, Jesus, Richard Nixon. I lived during this class, the teacher saying, "You there, Joan of Arc, stop flirting with Napoleon and pay attention." So basically they train these people, send them back into time so that now they do exist. And so they send the guy, you know, Jesus was actually one of these time travel actors. Using his scientific knowledge of 2074, he did all the miracles, you know. He made Lazarus rise up from the dead by using this little futuristic device. So now the head guy from the future says, "Yeah, I scrambled the wires of the time machine. That's why I faked my heart attack. I knew that they would jump in the time machine thinking that they were going to, you know, a certain year, but I sent them back to Golgotha to 33 AD. And that saved Jesus just in time." And so now we see poor board team is nailed to the cross. And so Jesus turns the water into wine in the future here. Everyone is happy. And even Miles, even though he's just a little bioderm, he's like, "Wee! All's well that ends well." I just love this story, how it just mushes together so many of Kim Deitch's seemingly random stories. This one is called Two Jews from Yonkers. I believe this is a Weirdo. And this is just an autobio comic. Kim and his brother, Simon, even though he gives them fake names. But it's obviously them. And it's just this, as you can see, it's heavily illustrated prose. Once again, we see those robots. And just Kim Deitch talking about being a cartoonist. Him and his brother were cartoonist partners. His brother was kind of a speed freak, not very reliable. It's just Kim living in this shady part of New York City, dangerous, roaches everywhere. He's getting mugged all the time. It's amazing that he lived like this. Pretty good autobiographical writing. Talks about how he has a gun because he's tired of getting mugged. Because basically every day these junkies just run up his stairs and attack him, or try to attack him. but thankfully the gun protects him. These little kids who just sniff glue on his on the stoop there. Now he runs into this guy Ira, who is just this huge guy, and I guess unfortunately Ira has become a junkie. So Kim Deitch is, I'm going to call him Kim Deitch. I don't want to call him by his fake name. He basically is like, this guy's going to scam me, whatever. I'm going to avoid this guy. Now, he does give Kim some speed. He sells him some speed. And Kim goes home. He's had writer's block for his comic strip. All of a sudden, he feels great. He's totally hitting the drawing board, doing this amazing art and stuff. And then he gets a call from Simon, who's in jail. Turns out, by the way, the speed were just M&Ms. When he cut him open, it was just M&Ms. He just tricked himself into thinking it was speed. So Simon starts telling him this crazy story about meeting the Pope. So I guess him and his friends were like, they had these Pope buttons. So the Pope was coming to New York City. They figured we could work the crowd. We'll sell a lot of buttons. I guess some crazy guy came in. I think he was one of the guys who sold buttons and kind of ran up to the Pope. Of course, the cops were going to beat the shit out of him. Pope Leo said, please let him go. And he actually called all the vendors to come up. All these button vendors. Almost, I guess, to bless them or just to greet them in a spirit of kindness. So let's skip a page. No. But he did score some speed, some real speed. And so now Simon and Kim are working on the comic together. And Simon comes up with this crazy story. So Kim draws it, and they turn in their assignment just in time for the deadline. And that's it for this book, at least. Kim Deitch has so many more stories than this. I have a feeling Fantagraphics, the past few years, they've been doing these great omnibus-style hardcovers, reprinting the full oeuvre of many great underground cartoonists. I wouldn't be surprised if they've done Kim Deitch. I would love to be able to afford those. I do have most of his stuff, probably, in various undergrounds and stuff. But man, just I want it all. I want every single thing. Because he did lots of comics for High Times. I have some of those, but I probably am just scratching the surface with that. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm too lazy to look it up, but I'm sure Fantagraphics has done some Kim Deitch since 1989, as well they should. So thanks for looking at this with me, guys. Kim Deitch, nothing but a good time. Highly recommended. And I hope to see you next time here at the Herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.